Developed treatment alternatives, or DTA, can be found from the planning cycle, strategic planning, and the develop treatment alternatives option. This is a nice option to view fire behavior outputs and landscape features in graphs side by side, as well as in tables, specifically for the same weather input but different landscape iterations. So creating a landscape in IFTDSS, making some changes to represent different fuel treatment alternatives or things along those lines, running landscape fire behavior basic, and comparing the results. A couple caveats here on this. Currently, it is only available for landscape fire behavior basic, and it has to be with a landscape created in IFTDSS and edited versions of that landscape. So to start, Develop Treatment Alternatives has a linear workflow. So we can go through the process of selecting our originating landscape. This is a landscape created in IFTDSS that has not been edited. We will have a chance to include edited versions later or make edits in this workflow. The other selection here is area of interest. So I've got some proposed treatment areas I'll use for this. We could also leave this blank and do this comparison for the entire landscape. Next, for edit landscapes, we'll select our originating landscape, and here we have a chance to make edits to represent various treatment alternatives. If we already had edited versions of this landscape, we could skip this and go to the next step. I do not, so I'll go ahead and put some edits in here. So once we have at least one edited version of our originating landscape, or one alternative, we can proceed to the model input, and this will be where we select the input parameters that will be run in the landscape fire behavior model for all of our landscapes and alternatives. And before saving these inputs, one word of caution here that once these are saved, this will lock in the weather profile for any future developed treatment alternative runs for this originating landscape and edited versions of it later. I'll go ahead and select Save Inputs to proceed to our next tab. This will be running the landscape fire behavior model for each of the landscapes. Right now we just have two, our originating unedited landscape and the edited version of that. We can leave these run names as they are if we want, or we could change them before running these models. I'll just leave them here as default and select Run Model. So this will run a landscape fire behavior model with those inputs we selected earlier on both of these landscapes. And next we'll be able to look at a comparison. You can see these models are still running, so I am going to demonstrate how to get back to this step in Develop Treatment Alternatives. Pretty straightforward. If we were to go somewhere else and work in IFTDSS and wanted to get back to that spot and develop treatment alternatives, say check back to see if our models are completed. You can go to Cycle, Strategic Planning, Develop Treatment Alternatives, and select our same landscape and treatment area combination. And you can see it sees the edits and model inputs and takes us back here to our model screen. Once the models are completed, we can look at the comparison. So I've got two models in here right now. We can have as many model outputs listed on this list as we want, but we can only compare two of them at a time. To start the comparison, I'll first select the treatment alternative, then I'll select the original landscape. For a quick geospatial view, we can click Compare on Map. This splits the screen and gives us several options here in the layer list. You can see the first one, landscape fire behavior change, followed by landscape change, and then the individual landscapes and fire behavior outputs. So for example, wanted to look at the landscape change, could select that, and the first thing we see is a change, no change comparison for our fuel model. And we can see pretty much every fuel model in here had been changed with our edits. We can also look at other features like canopy cover change, and a lot of these will go from warm colors to cool colors depending on whether they increased in the treatment alternative or decreased. So you can see canopy cover change has decreased. It's in that kind of cooler blue color. And this is where the identify tool can also be handy to look at the magnitude of some of these changes. So for example, this pixel, you can see we've got 9% less canopy cover in the alternative. Canopy base height has been increased by about 12 feet. So that can be handy to click around and look at the actual landscape changes given the edits that we did. The other handy aspect of this is the fire behavior change. So for example, with flame lengths turned on by default, you can see a few areas of yellow, so 0 to 1 foot flame length increase in some areas, but a lot of decreasing areas. Especially in this example in the east, some of these decreases are pretty substantial. A real valuable aspect of this is the summary reports, however. So I'll use the split screen button to go back to a full view here. I'll click Compare Landscape Fire Behavior Report. And while that's building, I'll create a report for the landscape compare as well. And once that's done, we can click View Report. And these reports are really handy because they provide a side-by-side look of all of the charts and tables. So flame length, for example, we've got our Granite Creek treatment area, the treated area in blue, and unedited in green. So this side-by-side report's really nice. Makes it pretty clear to see there's a noticeable shift in those higher flame lengths in the original landscape to shorter flame lengths in the treated landscape. Got a table view of this as well, and a pie chart view. And these figures can be scrolled over to see values for specific parts of them. You can also copy these to your local computer if you want to use them in external reports, say in Word or another document that you're working in. And here's a difference graph showing the increase in lower flame lengths and decrease in higher flame lengths. Now we get the same sort of products for rate of spread, fire line intensity, crown fire activity. So these are really handy to have this side-by-side graph at a glance. And whole reports can be saved. The reports are also available in my workspace. So if we go to workspace, we can see the landscape comparison and landscape fire behavior comparison reports. We've also got the two models that we ran. And if I wanted to run other alternatives, I could go ahead and do that from strategic planning, develop treatment alternatives, select our originating landscape and propose treatment areas. And we could create different edited alternatives. Or if we had made some edits elsewhere in IFTDSS, those would show up here, and we would just have to run a new landscape fire behavior model for those. For example, if I'd created another alternative in IFTDSS or had gone back to this Edit Landscape tab and created another one, that would show up here. And we would just have to run the model for that. Once the fire behavior model is complete here, we go to Compare Alternatives. And we see that alternatives is now an option to select in our Comparison tab. So if we wanted to select it and compare it with our original alternative, or compare it with our original landscape, we could. So that is a brief walkthrough of developed treatment alternatives.